Hey everyone, this is Marvin here, and I want to touch base with you a little bit about our summer sermon series, which is going through the book of Genesis. If you've been tuning in on Sunday mornings, either in person or online, or if you've been participating in Pastor Nikki's Bible study, you know that in Genesis chapter 12 through 50, God calls a particular family to a particular task and blesses them for that task. And that task is to bring a blessing to all families and all nations of the world. And God equips them for this task by doing some surprising and amazing things. The people that God calls are Abraham and Sarah, an elderly couple, an elderly childless couple, and God blesses them with a child late in life. As the story goes on, Abraham and Sarah die. Isaac marries a woman named Rebekah, and we pick up the story around the birth of Rebecca's two children. This is a story that we did not hear in Sunday worship on July 16th because we were honoring and hearing the testimonies of our 2023 mission participants. But this is a story that you need to know in order to make sense of this coming Sunday, July 23rd's scripture passage and service. Isaac and Rebekah are married, and Rebekah becomes pregnant. And it's a very hard pregnancy for her. In fact, it's so hard, she doesn't even understand why she's allowed to remain living. And she asks God, if it's got to be like this, why don't you just go ahead and take me? And God says in a revelation to Rebekah, or an oracle perhaps, that the reason why uh, Rebekah's pregnancy is so difficult is because in her womb are not just two brothers, but two nations who are going to be perpetually in conflict with each other. And God says, one shall be stronger than the other, the elder shall serve the younger. Now that's really surprising because in the ancient world, there was an ironclad law of what is known as primogeniture. That's where the oldest son receives the bulk of the inheritance upon the death of the patriarch. It's a law that provides for stability and an orderly transfer of wealth from one generation to the next. But of course, it's a law that works for some people, but doesn't work for everybody. It doesn't work for women, for instance. It doesn't work for younger male relatives, younger male siblings. And yet God declares an intention to upend this human arrangement, this human scheme of dispersing of wealth, and chooses the younger son to be the bearer of the blessing and the promise for the whole world. So what happens is Rebecca delivers her twins. Esau is the firstborn son. He comes out first. And then Jacob, the younger son, comes out second, holding on to Esau's heel. And the name Jacob in the Hebrew language literally means he takes by the heel or he supplants. And as the story unfolds, we find out that Jacob really is kind of a heel. As our storyteller tells it, Esau is kind of a man's man. You know, he's a hunter. He brings home game. He cooks it for the family. Jacob's kind of a quiet guy. He's a chef. Maybe he cooks whatever his manly older brother brings to him. But one day, Esau comes in and he's just starving because he's been out in the bush hunting all this time. And Jacob is stirring a pot, stirring some beef stew or soup or whatever. And Esau says, "Give me some of that to eat." And Jacob says, because he's kind of crafty and he's kind of slick, he says, "I'll trade you some soup for your birthright." And so Esau says, "Huh, I can't eat a birthright right now. Yeah, you've got a deal." And so Jacob spoons him out some food. So, not knowing this declaration that God has made to their mother, the two sons seem to make some decisions to enact this prophecy, this oracle by God. It seems as though Esau is someone who doesn't believe in delayed gratification, someone who thinks with his stomach instead of with his head. But then there's another story that is much more disturbing. Isaac, the brother's father, gets very old and he knows that he's about to die. And so he calls his son Esau and says, go hunt something up for me, and we're going to have dinner, and then I'm going to bless you. In the ancient world, the patriarch's blessing had a kind of magical, numinous power. And so Esau needs this blessing in order to go and be the leader of the household and the head of the household in generations to come. But Rebekah gets wind of this, and Rebekah's been told by God that the elder shall serve the younger. And so she hatches a plot with her younger son Jacob, and they dress him up like Esau, and they even make him kind of smell like his older brother, who's like always out there in the bush because Isaac is blind, he can't really see. And Jacob impersonates his brother Esau, and he receives the blessing. And then Esau comes in afterward, and he says, "I'm here, Dad, for my blessing." And the old man's like, I just blessed someone. What's going on here?" And Esau realizes he's been tricked. He's been swindled out of his blessing. And he says, "Bless me, Father." And Isaac says, "I'm sorry, son. That's not the way it works. I've only got one blessing." And they grieve together. And then after that, Esau has it in for Jacob and begins to plot to kill his younger brother. And Rebekah gets wind of this, and Rebekah decides to send Jacob away to do that thing that Abraham forbade his son Isaac from doing. Rebekah sends Jacob back home, away from the land of Canaan, away from the land that God has promised them, back to live with Rebekah's older brother, Jacob's uncle Laban. And that's where we're going to pick up the story when we meet on Sunday morning for worship. But what you do see in this story already is that Jacob is a man that's chosen by God, and that God's choice, in the words of Walter Brueggemann, my Old Testament professor who wrote a commentary on the book of Genesis, to be chosen by God is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing and a burden, because Jacob is marked by strife and by conflict with his closest family members throughout his life because of this awesome choice that God has made to elevate him over his older brother. The second thing I think that comes out really powerful is that God's choices are no respecter of human arrangements for power. And that is something that really kind of haunts me. You know, I've worked hard to get where I am in life. You know, I'm the oldest one in my family, but I have to acknowledge that I've worked hard in a world that doesn't work for everybody. And if God can upend conventional power relations, then I think about that and think about what is God doing at work around me, and where do I fit into God's plan? Kind of creates a little bit of anxiety there. And then the final thing is that God works through some unseemly characters in the story of the Bible to bring a blessing to the whole world. Jacob is a hard bargainer. He knows when to appeal to people's weaknesses. He's a con artist, he's a swindler. And yet, this one who is a con artist, a swindler, a hard bargainer, is the one who is chosen by God to carry on this blessing that God has made to his grandfather Abraham to bless all the nations of the world. So I'll just leave you with that. Lot to think about between this Sunday and next Sunday. If you want to read it for yourself, pick up in Genesis chapter 25 and read through chapter 28. I'll be preaching on Genesis 28 this Sunday, the story of Jacob on the run from his brother Esau, and a story in which he encounters God in the unlikeliest of places and makes a powerful response to that encounter. So, hope to see you in worship this Sunday, either in person or online. First Presbyterian Church, 20 Kings Highway East in Haddonfield, New Jersey. Catch us online at haddonfieldpres.org. Take care. Goodbye.